If there was a trial, what were the charges? The indictment was simply this: human CO2 emissions from the burning of fossil fuels are causing dangerous global warming. This is the global warming hypothesis, which supposedly has been conclusively proven. We note that since the trial began, the complaint was amended. Rather than alleging that increased CO2 is causing dangerous global warming, the amended complaint alleges that increased CO2 is causing dangerous climate change. However, since the gravamen of the charge remains that CO2 is causing the atmosphere to warm, and that this warming will have dangerous consequences, we generally will continue to refer to the global warming hypothesis or simply to global warming. If there was a trial, where and when was it held? For our purposes, the trial was conducted by the United Nations over a period of some decades. The specific forum for this trial was the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, a body created in 1988 for the express purpose of determining the human contribution to global warming. The public record of the trial is contained in a series of 5 reports, the last published in 2013. Other bodies have weighed in on global warming, but only the IPCC claims to be the preeminent authority in the world on climate change. If there was a trial, who were the participants? We've already briefly met the defendants, but who played the roles of judge, prosecutor, defense counsel, witnesses, and jury? The IPCC assumed the roles of judge and trier of fact, judge and jury. It not only decided what the applicable laws of science were and ruled on what evidence was admissible, it ultimately decided if CO2 was guilty. Throughout the trial, the IPCC supposedly acted as an honest broker and fairly adjudicated between the various competing scientific claims brought before it. The prosecutorial role was filled by CO2's various accusers. It is fair to characterize the prosecution as a diverse social movement which mobilized over time and agitated for CO2's conviction. The movement includes individuals such as former Vice President Al Gore and certain activist scientists such as James Hansen and Michael Mann. It also includes politicians, environmental organizations, population control groups, opponents of capitalism, advocates for world governance, and even businesses hoping to profit from CO2's conviction. The witnesses were the various scientists and other academics who contributed research for the consideration of the IPCC. However, one very important category of witness wasn't human at all. Testimony from computer models figured very prominently in the trial. The defense counsel role was largely played by certain dissident scientists. Prominent among them were Richard Lindzen, Robert Carter, and Roy Spencer. A very important role, however, was played by laymen such as Stephen McIntyre and investigative journalists such as Donna Laframboise. The gallery at the trial was decidedly in favor of CO2's guilt. Leading the way here were the journalists, who largely ignored their professional duty to be objective and were all in for the prosecution. If a lay jury played a role in the trial, it would only be in the sentencing phase. After finding CO2 guilty of causing dangerous global warming, the IPCC then proposed options for adaptation or mitigation. Whether or not to act on these proposals is in the hands of the politicians, governments, and ultimately their constituents. Even though politicians and governments have been inclined to go along with the IPCC, public opinion polls show global warming ranks very low on the general public's list of concerns, which shows that, as far as common citizens are concerned, the jury is still out on the central issue of whether CO2 is guilty at all.